Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and everybody else watching. My name's Eric, and welcome back to a brand new interview. This is one I've been promising for quite a bit, and thankfully, I have the humble and gracious Karl Hanover with me. If you aren't familiar with that name, you definitely should be because he is one of the main characters in Bioshock, that being Atlas and Frank Fontaine. So, Karl, how are you doing, my friend?
Good, delighted to be here. Thank you all for having me. Yeah, I'm sorry it took so long. I had no idea, but yeah, it's one of those things. I'm delighted to be here now.
It's one of those things where it's better late than never, you know?
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
So I guess the first thing I can really dive into is obviously with your character and just you in general. You came from Ireland and, you bounced around from different states to state and all that. Where was it where you first initially got the pitch for this project, that being the original Bioshock? And then how did you actually go about getting the role? And if you want to clear up about the IMDb on Bioshock 1, you're more than welcome to as well.
Sure. Yeah, no, I grew up in Ireland, and yeah, I'm from the south side of Dublin, out near Dunleary. And if anyone in Ireland who's watching, out near Glasgow, and so I grew up there, and I went to school in Dublin, and I went to university in Dublin, and then after university, I decided to give acting a go, which I had never really done before, and one of the the original things that struck me was that if I got up on a stage in front of all my friends in Dublin on opening night and forgot all my lines, they'd all laugh at me and I'd never do it again because I'd be so embarrassed. So I thought I should probably go somewhere where no one knows me. So I one of the things you can do in Ireland, I don't know if you still can, but you could back then, is there's a lottery every few years, I believe, where you send your name and your phone number or whatever it is to the US Embassy, and they will randomly pick a certain number of names out of a hat. And if you can secure in advance a job when you get to America or a sponsor, they will give you a visa. So I was lucky enough to get one of those. I applied and I got one, and I was able to sort out a job in advance through friends and stuff. And so I landed in San Francisco, and in 1994, at the beginning of the summer, and decided to just sort of take acting classes. So I started taking acting classes in City College in San Francisco. The following year in '95, once I got a job working in a restaurant and got some rent money going, and was able to feed myself, started taking classes and stuff, and sort of just spent many years in San Francisco doing theater and really enjoying it and having a great time, but as a sort of a part-time thing, in the evenings and weekends. And then so this is probably way more of a biography than anyone needs. But anyway, so then I then applied to go to graduate school. At the time, it's now gone, sadly, but there was the Denver Center for the Performing Arts with the National Theatre Conservatory. It was based there. And the National Theatre Conservatory was an MFA program, Master of Fine Arts program in acting that you could do, which was 3 years. And it was all day, every day, sort of 6 days a week kind of thing for 3 years, summers off. And the great thing about it was free, and plus they paid you a stipend to live. So I wasn't going to go into massive debt because I didn't have any money. So and it was by audition, and so I was lucky enough to get in, and I got into that and did that for 3 years, and then out of that went straight to New York. Brings us up to date in about 2006. And then at the end of 2000, so when I got there, I was managed to get a voiceover agent. And having never really done it, but it was something in graduate school that we had created demo tapes for ourselves, where we watched some TV commercials and sort of went, oh, I could do something like that, and we would come up with some copy and we would read it, and the school helped us mix sort of background noises and sound effects and things, and then we had a CD that we were able to just sort of send out to people. I know it was back when CDs were sent out. And we would send out a CD to people, and or I think at that point I had converted it to an MP3 at that point, but so I could email it. But I submitted it to a bunch of agents, and one of them luckily said yes. And so I got a voiceover agent, and I had not done any work for them. They'd sent me on a few auditions, and to no avail. And I used to, by the way, as a side And tell me if I'm talking too much. But I remember going to two different auditions, which made me really mad. I don't have a typical Lucky Charms Irish accent, as you probably
Yeah,
can tell.
like the stereotypical one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because there's every 6 miles in Ireland there's a different accent. So I don't have that. And so I remember going to a Guinness audition. It was for a TV commercial for the voiceover. And I walked in to sign in, and they said, your name, and I said, my name's Karl Hanover, I'm here for the audition. And the woman who was American behind the counter just went, "You're not Irish." And I, don't tell an Irishman he's not Irish when you're not and you can't tell. And just because you don't recognize the accent, I have to admit, I think I probably blew my chances for that audition in that moment, because I became a little heated. It wasn't my best day, but I was not impressed by that response. So anyway, and I went to a James. This is all actually apropos of something later about Bioshock, so that's why I mentioned that story. And the same thing happened with the Jameson ad. I went in, and this time they sort of, my agent said, "Oh, always, what they'll say, just talk naturally." But they said they don't want that. They want Lucky Charms. So go in and do that. So I said, okay. So I went in and completely forgot and just talked to my natural accent. And they came out and they were like, "Well, you don't really sound Irish." Oh, that was the feedback. So, oh well. So that's important though for a thing about Bioshock in a minute, because I then one of the next auditions they sent me on, I think it was either the end of this 2006 or the beginning of 2007. They sent me out for an audition for. I remember getting a side, and I remember it was called Bioshock, and I got the side, and it was for an Australian, and he was sitting at a bar in some place called Rapture or something, because obviously a side is just a page, and it was just a short monologue, and there was no context.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I actually looked for it when I knew we were going to do this chat, and see if I could find the original side, and I couldn't. But I don't have the email. I have emails from a few months later, but not the initial one, which is sad. I wish I still had it. But the bit was talking about Adam and little sisters and all this kind of thing, and I had no clue and what it was. Splicers. I was just staring at this going, what on earth is happening? I have no clue what I'm even reading. This makes no sense. So I didn't really know how to do the bit. So I went in anyway for the audition, and you go in and there's a line of people ahead of you. And I actually got chatting to a few of the people ahead of me, and I distinctly remember in particular there's these two Australian guys ahead of me. And I immediately went, well, that's that. I'm out the window. There's already two Australian guys ahead of me coming in for an Australian part. Forget it. So but you go in, and I just sort of gave it a go. I used to watch Neighbours as a kid. It's a soap opera in Australia that used to be shown in Ireland, and I used to watch it when I was a kid. So I suppose that helped. But I did that, and I gave it a go, and they said, thank you very much, and I left. And then I got a call to come back, probably a couple of weeks later. It's usually a bit of a turnaround, so I don't remember. It's 15 years ago. By the way, if I get any factual stuff wrong, it was 15 years ago. This is as best as I remember it, rather than being 100% accurate.
I wouldn't worry about it. We'll get fact checkers down in the comments. Yeah.
No, that didn't happen then. I'm going to go, sure, I believe you. That's how I remember it, but it's been a while, and I'm old. So I heard from them a week or two later, I don't know exactly, and I went in and to record it. So I got the part, and so I went in and I recorded it, and I was in New York, and Ken Levine was only on headphones, so I've never actually met Ken Levine, which is kind of fun, but he was on headphones, and he I think was in Boston or in the Boston area.
Yeah.
And at the time at least, and so I recorded it, and he said at the end of it there was a pause, and again I'm as best as I can remember, and I am paraphrasing. I don't remember the exact conversation, but what I remember is he basically sort of said, "So you're not from Australia?" And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm from Ireland." And he goes, "Like, it's funny because we had some Australians audition." I'm thinking, yeah, and he said, but we sent the tapes to, because 2K at the time also had I think it was 2K had an office in Australia, I think. And he said, we sent the tapes to Australia and they picked you. And I immediately thought of the Irish thing and the Guinness and the Jameson going, So, I probably just did the stereotype. I did the equivalent of an Australian Lucky Charms is what I was thinking at the time. That's probably, what I did rather than something authentic. But anyway, they sort of said, so they picked you, and that's what we went with. And I said, okay. So he said, do you do any other accents, dialects? And I said, no, he said, do you do any other impressions? And I said, no, I'm not an impressionist. Like, if you asked me to do Robert De Niro or something, I couldn't do it. Or Meryl Streep, I wouldn't be able to. But I'm fairly good at doing different, accents. I can do French or German or, that kind of thing. I can do those kinds of things. So he said, so there was a pause, and he goes, so do Danny DeVito. And I said, I can't. I wouldn't even know where to start. I don't know how to do Danny DeVito. He goes, okay. He said, it's just, and then he basically sort of said that they had already recorded these other parts, and they weren't sure. I'd either tested it or something, or screen tested or something. But there was something about the performance they see, and he was like, the performance is brilliant by the actor. But it's just that when they screen tested, they weren't sure that people necessarily fully trusted the character. This is what I remember, at least, how he described it. He said, it was brilliant, but he said that and he sort of said, so listening to you and the fact that you can do other things is making me wonder. And so we started chatting then about it. And I distinctly remember during it, he said, like, if I had all the money in the world, I would have hired Morgan Freeman for this part. And I sort of, thought, why am I here? I think he meant Atlas and Fontaine, not for the Australian guy, but it was one of those things that was just like, wow, okay, that's cool. And then he said, like, well, what other, he said, so you're Irish, and he said, you don't sound, I think there's something along the lines, you don't sound, what I would typically expect, etc. And so I sort of said, yes, I don't have your typical Irish accent, but I can do a whole bunch of them. And I said, I could sound more like, and I picked Gabriel Byrne in Miller's Crossing. He said, do that. I said, so, give him a sense of what I was talking about. So I did sort of slightly more, like that, talking, and that's too far for Gabriel Byrne. I said more like that as sort of an idea, but then I sort of went further than that and sort of, talk. It's a bit more, just sort of different part of Dublin. I mean, there's just sort of, that's the only difference really. Every 6 miles in Ireland, they say you get a new accent. And so there's just lots of them in Dublin, and that's just a different one. But I did find that it's more distinct to the ear is that accent. It's the vowel sounds and stuff are broader and all that kind of thing. So it was just more distinct. And he said, yeah, no, I like that. So let's, he said, can we record you doing a bit of that? And then he said, well, he said, so Miller's Crossing? I said, yes. And he said, well, I'm looking for something like New York or Chicago or something like that, and sort of a gangster. And I said, well, there's the character of Eddie Dane in the film Miller's Crossing. And I said, again, I can't do impressions. And I said, I'm not even going to try. But I could give you something like that. That's sort of like that sort of, probably stereotypical. I'm Irish, so I don't know. But that sort of gangster, sort of New York, Chicago type thing. And he said, just have a go and give us something. So I did. I just recorded whatever I could. I just sort of, pulled it out of my ass a bit and sort of did it off the top of my head. And he said, great, we'll be in touch. And then, they came back to me a while later and sort of said, yeah, we want to hire you. And, here's pages and pages and pages and pages of script with no other dialogue. It was just Atlas and Fontaine lines. And I still had no idea the plot. I had no idea of any of it, really. I went home after that main audition, and I Googled it or used whatever search engine at the time, Internet Explorer, whatever it was, and tried to figure out if I could find out more about it. And there was a little bit online at that time, not the way it would be now, but it would just sort of very vague. There's this game in the works from the makers of
System Shock.
System Shock. I was going to say Future Shock, but that was a book. System Shock, yes. Future Shock, I think, is a book by Alvin Toffler from like the 90s or 80s or something. But anyway, so I probably have got his name wrong as well. But so it was System Shock, that's right. And so from the makers of that, there's this game that they're working on, and there was sort of a vague description, maybe part of the equivalent of a Wikipedia page. But that was about it. And so I still had no real clue. And then so I got it and I went in, and I'd never done a professional voiceover gig before. So that was terrifying, and there's some embarrassing stories from doing it, and that kind of thing. But it's one of those things where it was a great experience. I genuinely loved it. I know that I often watch interviews with people, the movie stars on late night TV or whatever, being interviewed, and they're out to promote a film or something, so they just talk about how fantastic it was. It doesn't matter how bad the film is. There's like, here's the, that person was great and they're fantastic. I genuinely had a blast doing it because I'd never done anything like it before. And yeah, and I've not done any film or anything, so it's one of those things where I've done a few extra stuff on film and stuff, but no, the also the idea of doing a take, and if it's good, you don't ever have to do it again, is for an actor who does mostly stage work. It's very sad on some ways because if you're really enjoying doing it, you don't get to do it again. Oh no! But on the other hand, you also don't have to save anything, I guess, in a weird way. Sometimes with theatre, your part of your consideration is sometimes, can I repeat this night after night, 8 shows a week, night after night after night, and 4 times on the weekends. If you're playing something like Hamlet, you can't spend all of your energy in the first couple of nights, because by the end of the week, you're going to be exhausted, and that audience is going to get half a performance. So you have to marshal your reserves and sort of take care of the character as well as yourself, in a sense, just from a stamina point of view, and what can I maintain, etc., so that you have a certain standard, etc. And still make it really authentic and real and everything. So it's one of, that's the sort of, there's there are people who are natural actors and there's people who are technical actors, and the goal is to marry the two and be as natural as you can possibly be, with all the technical skill that you need to be heard at all times at the back of the theater. If your crazy director decides to have you do an entire monologue, lying on the floor facing up stage, you still need to be heard by everybody in the theater. So you need to figure out a way to be heard, using your instrument, etc. So it's one of those things that, anyway, that's all to say that, so the one of the things I loved about doing voice work, though, is that you could really just sort of go, okay, if I really need to, go for it here and scream or yell or something, you can, without worrying about losing your voice, because you don't ever have to repeat it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was great. Although I will say, my first day, one of the things that early on they said, and I was very nervous and I was very sort of intimidated by it, I have to say. And I walked into the room and I went into the booth, and there's a room full of people out there, and I'm perspiring, I'm sure, and slightly hands shaking and terrified and everything. And but I did remember asking. We started recording, and then not too far into it, we came to a page where they wanted to record what I figured out to be Atlas. Various deaths, and they all involved screaming and yelling and that kind of thing. And I distinctly remember there was lots of different. One was being burnt and one was being something else. But I do remember there was one that was being killed either by bees or wasps.
Yeah, the plasmid is insect swarm. I think it's either one of them, but yeah.
And so, I haven't played the game because, that thing about listening to yourself and hearing yourself and being uncomfortable. And I've watched other people play, and I've been able to last for a few minutes, and then my characters start talking and I have to leave. But because it looks like a fantastic game, but it's just one of those things where I just can't play it. But anyway, so I did ask that we do those last, because I was terrified. Because I was under the impression it was going to be one long full day, about an 8-hour day of recording. And I said, I'll have no voice by the end of the day if I do that now and start screaming and yelling and trashing around the place. So they left them till the end, which also reminds me of another funny story, which just shows you my inexperience and doesn't reflect well on me, which is always the best kind of story. Is we get to the part about the bees, and it's why I remember it distinctly. Is that we get to that, and they said, okay, so you're being attacked by a swarm of bees, and by this time I've been there probably 5 or 6 hours, maybe 8 hours, I don't know how long, and I'm into it. I'm much more relaxed, and I'm much calmer, and I've just got used to the whole circumstance, and so I'm just more relaxed and everything. So I then they say, go for it, you're being attacked by a swarm of bees. So I thought, I should just act it out rather than just sort of leaning into a microphone and going which isn't going to do it very well. I'll just pretend I'm being attacked by a swarm of invisible bees and just do it. And then they can record the sound. So I start thrashing around. They said to go for a minute or two. I don't know how long, but it feels like forever. After about 10 seconds, it immediately feels like, oh, this is never going to end. And because it's just such a long time. And so I'm thrashing around for what I think is whatever amount of time they wanted, 45 seconds or something, maybe a minute. And I stop, and I'm panting, and it's been Oscar-worthy performance of being attacked by metal bees or whatever it is, and there was a long silence, and Ken Levine, I think it was, or the sound engineer, I can't remember which, it comes on, and in my headphones just goes, that was fantastic, great, thanks. This time, can you do it into the microphone? So that was a little awkward and a little embarrassing. Yeah, that would help probably when you're doing voiceover and recording, that you aren't thrashing around so much that you're not even pointing at the microphone. Inexperience.
But I mean, hey, it's a hell of a story. I mean, you were telling me one on the phone. Didn't like Ken ask you to like rip your shirt off or something?
Not quite rip. No, what happened was, yeah, we'd only been going about 10 or 15 minutes, and I'm only just starting to get comfortable, as I say, because you're doing it in front of a room full of people, and they're all just sort of sitting there with clipboards staring at you and then muttering to one another because they're all on headphones. And there's talking, well, do we want this? Do we want that? And oh, that does that, and then they may be talking about nothing to do with you. They may be talking about, is the sound quality good, whatever. But you're paranoid. You're completely paranoid. You're looking at going, you finish a take and you look up and they're all muttering. You're going, oh, they hate it. They hate it. They think they're going to fire me. That's all you're thinking for the first half hour. At least that's all I was thinking for the first half hour. And so anyway, but yeah, at one point we'd been doing it for a little bit, not long. I don't feel like it was more than about 15, 20 minutes. And they said, yeah, there's this weird sound on the recordings. And we're not quite sure what it is, but it's very strange. There's this weird sound. And I'm going, well, I don't know what to tell you. So they think they even came into the booth and were looking around, and they're trying to, and they went, okay, go again. I'm not sure what's going on. And they were checking levels and checking the mics and stuff. And eventually, I think the sound engineer figured it out. He goes, yeah, it's your shirt. When you move, you can't, like the really good microphones that they have that are really up close to you is, it's one of those things where, they're incredible quality. So you move your shirt, and if you're wearing a certain kind of shirt with a sort of stiff fabric, it will make noise. And so, and it did, and it was driving them nuts. So they basically said, yeah, can you take off your shirt, please? And I was just like, are you kidding me? I don't know any of you, and you want me to do today for 8 hours with no shirt on? Fortunately, I was wearing one of those like string undershirt things. Not flattering. I was thinking, because it was, I think, warm in New York, and I was thinking, I just wouldn't arrive in with pit stains and stuff all over me. I wear an undershirt of some kind, but no, I had to do so I remember joking with friends saying I had to do the first day of recording on Bioshock half naked, which was an exaggeration just for fun, but it was one of those things. But yeah, I was in my undershirt for most of that first day, which was mortifying. Again, I'm not the most confident person in the world, and as you can tell by the fact that I haven't stopped for breath. And, it's one of those things where I fear the silence. So, I basically just talked and talked and talked to cover that. But, it was mortifying. Absolutely mortifying. But I got over it.
It just, like I said, it makes for one hell of a story to tell.
But anyway, yeah.
Okay, so obviously with the two different characters, it's not like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing. It's just the story of a con man, essentially, who wants to take Rapture for himself. And the different cadences that are used, like you were talking about earlier, it seems like for the Atlas persona, the Irish went a little bit higher in like octave, like a little bit more snarky and sarcastic. And then when it was the Fontaine, that was more, like you said, baseline, like New Yorker type accent. How hard is it to dip in and out of each character, especially with you being natively Irish versus doing that New York accent? Is it difficult to adjust to, or is it just something that kind of comes naturally?
It's a very good question, and I'm not sure I have a good answer for you. I'm one of the jobs I do in my day jobs are I'm a dialect coach for theatre. So and that's only since it's only been in about the last 10 years, but I've always done a bit of it because I've always had a bit of an ear for accents. So, as I say, the Australian stuff, it's one of those things. I think it's partly because, you learn very well by listening. And one of the things that growing up in Ireland is there wasn't a huge amount of homegrown television. So you always had all of the American TV shows and the British TV shows and many Australian TV shows and that kind of stuff. So, you're exposed to a lot of different accents all the time. So, because all the variation within those. So I had a bit of an ear for it anyway, I suppose I would say. But to answer your question, I guess I don't know if I thought of it that technically at the time. I can't really take any credit for the dialogue stuff either. And this it's a bit broader of an answer than I'm going to give you than what you asked, I guess, because it's tied to so many different things. I, by the way, have listened to some of the other voice work on the game and have just been blown away by some of it. I mean, some of them are just, it's like, oh, I wish I had that voice. What a voice, you know? I just, because I can't even hear myself without cringing, but, it's one of those things that listening to some of those voice actors do work are just gorgeous to listen to. It's like, like melting chocolate. It's just beautiful. But anyway, so, yeah. That aside, I don't think I can take much responsibility for it in a sense because the script, I didn't really have a clear picture because there was no visuals to show me of the I was very much spoon-fed to some degree by Ken Levine. It's one of those things, maybe he just didn't know if I could do the character, but it was one of those things where he would sort of, we would get to a part in the script, you go, okay, so this is what's happening here, this is what's going on, etc. What I'm really looking for is this kind of thing. And after we had sort of landed on that first Atlas and Fontaine, which were sort of a bit off the cuff in the audition, we did sort of polish them initially, just sort of in the first few sort of recordings, the first, and I think he probably tweets me. It was interesting when I went to do the second one, and I know I'm jumping ahead a bit rather than answering your question, but I went to do Bioshock 2, those sort of nugget recordings, I think it is the way they did it.
Yeah, the audio logs, I believe. Yeah.
That's what exactly. I went in and it was a different director, and it was in Marin, and I felt very badly afterwards because I hadn't done the role in a long time, so I had to go back. I actually asked them to send me the audio logs from the first game, or the audio files from the first game of all my recorded bits, so I could listen to them and get the accent back, both of them back, because I didn't want to go in and do something different. And then the day I went up, I was living in San Francisco, and they were in Marin, which is just if you go over the Golden Gate Bridge, the next county up is Marin. And so, and it's 2K Marin, it was where they were going to record it. Just happenstance, it was just fortunate. So it was great. So I don't drive, so I hopped on a bus, went over the Golden Gate Bridge, got off the bus, and it was sheeting rain. And I walked I suppose, half a mile to the place. I arrived looking like a drowned rat, and was soaking wet, and they were all very nice to me, and they were all, etc. I'd never met any of these people before except one. There was a lady named Lydia Jenner, I beg your pardon, Lydia Jenner, who had been my liaison, or the person I had worked with initially in New York, and she had the one who was tracked me down, and so it was nice to see her again. And so it was one of those things where I went in and I started to record, and they went, "You sound different." And so this is to your point about the pitch and everything, and it was on Fontaine, and they were going, you're growling, your gravelly voice, and I was thinking, at the time I was a smoker, so I'm not anymore, but it was one of those things where I had I've been a smoker for years, and I thought, maybe my voice has changed over the years, and I don't know what I'm doing. So I was trying to, and they were going like, we're listening to it, and I'm going, I think I'm doing what I was doing, and they were going, no, you sound different, and it was a bit of a struggle. And I felt badly for them because I thought, I'm just not delivering what they were hoping for. And I came away a little sad about that one because it didn't feel like they were like, no, they just go, no. And they were really nice. They were the nicest people. But I just felt like I was disappointing them. And I felt badly about that day of recording. It was one 2-hour session kind of thing. But they were a bit kind of, you sound different. And I got home and woke up the next morning smothering with a cold. I had been getting sick. And I couldn't tell that I was sounding different. To my ear, I sounded the same. But clearly, it didn't come across to them because I woke up the next day and I was a mess. I had a really heavy cold. And so I think that's what they were hearing. I'm getting soaked for the half-mile walk or whatever it was to get to the place. Probably didn't help.
That sure as hell didn't help.
My temperature was probably up and I didn't know yet, etc., etc. So I felt really badly, and I was probably more stuffed up than I knew, and all that. So without being too gory details. So so it is fascinating that to your question, where you can think you're doing it right and you're not. And it may be that you're just getting it wrong, or it may be external circumstances. And I have no idea with the second one if that was the case, which is the case. But it was one of those things. I felt like I let them down. I just felt badly about that one. But anyway, so the difference between the two characters, because we sort of landed on, and I had in my head, okay, I know what I tried to do was sort of my version of that Eddie Dane character. I just went there and wasn't thinking in terms of pitch and everything. If I was doing something in a play where I dialect coach and there's an actor who is gonna it has two characters to play and that we want to make them very different, I would look at how fast someone talks, the pitch of their voice, the placement too, because you can vary your pitch, you can be up and down, and Irish people are all over the place when they talk. It's one of the things that people think of them as a very musical accent, but you can also, your placement of just generally, like I can be down here and sort of just talk normally and get lots of inflection down here. Or I can be up here and be sort of in my upper register and be sort of talk up there all the time. And I tend to be somewhere in between normally. So I guess what I must have done is been up around here normally and did that for Atlas and just sort of did it. And then when we got to the Eddie Dane thing, the style thing, I sort of pitched it down without thinking. And they went, yeah, that's good, let's do that. I do remember I struggled enormously with two things. I kept speeding up. I, as you can probably tell from the last while, tend to talk very quickly. You should see it when I talk to my brother and sister. My wife, who's American, is basically can't understand me anymore when I start talking to my brother and sister on the phone because apparently I speed up enormously. Yeah, I struggled with keeping Frank Fontaine slower. I kept speeding him up without realizing it, and I do remember Ken going, "Nope, slow down. Nope, slow down. Nope, slow down," kind of thing. You're going too fast, because it was my natural, maybe nervousness, maybe I don't know what, my natural rhythm.
I was gonna say, yeah, it might have been more like instinctive too, especially with when you're speaking like quote unquote native tongue. I'll just use that phrase. Obviously, like you were mentioning, you're a quick speaker, so trying to do that and try to slow it down when you're not used to going at, let's say, 20 miles an hour, you're used to going 100 miles an hour. It could be probably drastically different, kind of throw you off your game a little bit.
Absolutely, that's exactly it. Yes, my tendency was just to keep trying to speed up and speed up and speed up, and so that was because the Frank Fontaine is more daring, that kind of that long elongated vowels and stuff, and that was one of the ways we kept it slower. It was a trick that that I was using to try and keep myself slower, was that get in that sort of vocal rhythm of just slowing stuff down and elongating some things, and that would slow me down because my tendency was to speed up at times. Also, so the other thing I was going to say is I really struggled with was there was one thing we left, and I asked to remember it distinctly for the session, because we wound up doing way more than one session. And then we did multiple, because they kept doing rewrites and things, because as they went through it, and it's like, and even during as we were going along, Ken would go, "Oh, would an Irish person say it that way, or would they say it this way?" Or and I would give a little feedback and stuff. But he very, very much caught the voice of the voice of the character, not the audio voice, but like how they would talk. That was all him. It was one of those things he would ask me, sort of, does that, would you get away with saying that as an Irish person? I might go, the boyo thing can be a bit of a stereotype, but I think he sort of used, I think because it was someone putting on an Irish accent, it was one of those things where, so there's these little, I think he thought of it as an Easter egg of like, you might figure it out, you might not, I don't know, but it was one of those things where if he didn't, it was a great idea, because it is one of those where you then go back and go, oh, actually, yeah, it's a little, because they're it's not to say Irish people don't use that word, but it's not as common as you might think. And so it's one of those things where it'd be more regional. And so, I don't naturally say it in my day-to-day speaking. It's not something that I would have grown up saying. So, but certainly heard. But, so it's one of those things where, he was very clever about that kind of thing too. The other thing he was enormously clever about was that, but I can go down to that in a minute if you want, but he never told me the significance of "Would You Kindly." I didn't know it. Even after we'd finished recording, he never told me, which I thought was brilliant, because I would probably inevitably have, stressed it too much, and I truthfully didn't even notice that we recorded over such a long period of time, because we originally went in, and I think we did, I feel like that first, we had a couple of sessions lined up initially. We did half one day and half the next day was originally going to be the idea. And we had booked it for about 8 hours. I think we did about 5 or 6. And then everyone was really tired and was like, okay, I think, and it was my first time ever doing it. And I think I was probably purple in the face with exhaustion. and nerves. But so I think we did 1 or 2 days initially. I could be wrong about that. And then I got called back in to do some re-recordings. There was one session that the audio was bad. There was another session where they wanted to fix some things, blah, blah, blah. And then it was another 2 or 3 weeks later, they had me back in for one final session to re-record some other things. And there were always little rewrites as well, where, you know, they'd obviously gone back and listened to the audio and gone, I want to tweak that, I want to tweak that. So it was always also a bit of a work in progress, you know, so it was one of those things where, so all of those things. But I do remember there was one bit where I had to transition mid-sentence from Atlas to Fontaine. And, you know, they said, we can record the sentence in both ways. You can do the whole sentence as Atlas and the whole sentence as Fontaine, and we can try and morph them together. But it's like, no, we got to try and do it where you just mid-sentence morph. And that's what's in the game. So I don't know how many takes it took. I know it took more than one. It took a few, but and it wasn't easy, but it took a lot of concentration, because I guarantee you I screwed it up a few times. But yeah, transitioning from one to the other when neither is my original way of speaking was a little tricky.
Because it goes hand in hand with the next question that I have as well. So we were talking about this on the phone as well. The lobotomy scene in Burial at Sea episode 2. I don't know if you noticed this, but a lot of the players even might not have noticed it. If you actually turn the subtitles on, and you're talking to Elizabeth, you're putting the pick under the eyelid and all that, it says Atlas, and then it has the dialogue after. But then, all of a sudden, your character gets pissed off because he's not getting the information that he wants. So then it slips, and you start screaming, and then it says Frank Fontaine, so you had to do it again for Burial at Sea episode 2. Was that a lot more difficult than the first time, or was it, like, basically on par?
Because of my experience with the second one and the feeling that I'd let them down and I didn't do it well, I was really concerned when I went in to do the third time, because I obviously had no idea there was going to be a third time, and they reached out. Excuse me. And I was then living in Portland. I live in Portland, and so I was then living in Portland, and they reached out and they asked me to do it, and I, of course, said yes. I mean, without hesitation, and because I loved doing it and I was really excited, but I was nervous that so I went back to those tapes and spent more time, you know, remembering, and, you know, I literally put, you know, on my MP3 player, you know, all the recorded files, and I would literally speak along with them for days in advance, just to make sure that I was back in the right speeds and the right rhythms, because we're now talking at least 10 years on.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's one of those things. And, you know, I've aged. I was in my 30s when I recorded the first one, and now in my 50s. So it's one of those things where, you know, it's that also is going to change things. Mm-hmm. You know, your weight changes and your body changes and all the different things that can affect your throat and your voice and everything. And, you know, your skin dangles a bit more and all that kind of thing. So I don't know what exactly is going to affect my voice, but, you know, and you know, and I've been off. I had quit cigarettes, you know, 8-10 years ago. I had quit cigarettes at that point. So it was one of those things where, you know, it was going to be I got concerned that I didn't do it right, or they came in and went, you don't sound like you used to, or something. So I did spend a lot of time not trying to sort of go back to what it felt like or anything, but trying to reproduce what I had done so that there would be continuity. So that was a lot of prep on my part to make sure that I didn't walk away feeling like I disappointed anyone. And I felt like, and there was no point when we went in there that they said, you don't sound like it, which was good, which I was because it was back to the Ken Levine. It was no longer Jordan Thomas, I think, was directed the second one.
Yes.
Memory. So it was one of those things where I was concerned that, you know, it would be, you don't sound like you used to, and I never heard that. So they may have thought it, but I didn't hear that. We went in and we recorded it in one studio, and all the stuff, and then that entire day's recording had to be thrown out and had to be redone. So I had to go back and do it a second time later on. So that was, you know, also it was strange, but yeah, they had there was something wrong with the files, that the way they had recorded it or whatever. So yeah, but it was back to, you know, headphones on in a booth, just one person in the room, which was nicer, felt a little calmer, and and then just, you know, recording all the stuff, and I remember, you know, Ken sort of going, I got some fun stuff for you today. And then we got to the transorbital lobotomy, and again, I mean, he does, but I didn't have any visual reference for this. And I'm going, when he first said transorbital lobotomy, I mean, you can guess what it's sort of about, but I was going, so can you describe this procedure to me? And I mean, so it is a little bit surreal. And I did record it intentionally, acting it out. So I wanted to know what it was, because I always feel like that's going to, just leaning into a microphone and trying to act like you're being, chased by a dinosaur or whatever it is just, you got to sort of be chased by, like, sort of act it out a bit, and it's going to sound a little more authentic, I think. So I did try and sort of literally just, the way when you're doing something delicate and you sort of, you lift your chin because you're sort of looking down your nose, and it changes how your voice sounds, and you're sort of trying to get at things, and that, the way, if you just do it do the lines into a microphone, you might not even think to do that. Whereas when you start, it just automatically, you can hear it. It just automatically starts to happen. My voice starts to change slightly, and you're reaching, and you're being delicate, and you start to slow yourself down as you do things. So acting it out, I know it may sound like really basic and obvious, but when it wasn't obvious to me, I guess, is that when you're doing voiceover, because you're so intent on getting it right, and after the B experience, making sure it's into the microphone, and you don't bang the microphone, which is something that they get very sad at when the microphone costs $100,000 and that kind of thing. And you also don't want to be your page turning as you're trying to read your script and read the lines as you're doing it, etc. And all those kinds of things. There's a lot of different things going on, and you're also making sure you don't, because if you make one slight word flub, you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. If you've got a section where you're trying to act it all out and you put in an and, or you forget an and or something, you do it again. And so there's a whole bunch of different things going on. So I always found, excuse me, that doing it, acting it out, changes the way you would do it anyway, and then you've got all the other stuff to deal with too. So yeah, it can be a challenge, but it's great fun.
Now,
I just went off on a tangent. Did I?
No, you're good. That's what this is for. It's to, like I said before we actually started recording, I want to give a face to the actual characters itself. So any stories, any insight, I'm sure people are going to appreciate. So fire away. Like I said, no worries.
Yeah, I might be out of stories at this point. I don't know. I won't remember them till you say something that sparks them. But the Ken Levine saying that, not telling me about the "Would you kindly," I just thought it was a stroke of genius. I really did. I just thought, because I probably wouldn't have been. I wasn't probably talented enough not to, do something that would ever so slightly, just even if I was thinking, okay, don't give anything away. But you do want to make sure, maybe your brain would go, you want to make sure that people really hear you saying it, or something that would give an ever so slight emphasis to it, and therefore people might start to not telling me was a brilliant idea. And I was really pleased when I found out. I was like, oh, you cheeky bugger, and that's great. I'm really glad you did that, because I just thought, what a clever thing to do. It's just not tell me, just have me chat. And I didn't even notice the phrase, didn't even notice it. I actually only found out about it after the game came out, and as I haven't played. So friends came up to me and went, "Yeah, would you kindly?" And I'm going, "What are you talking about?" And then they started to tell me, and then I started to look back at some of the script and stuff. I was like, oh, that's clever.
It basically starts at even the beginning of the game. It's kind of like just leaving bread trails all the way up until that final solution, because I think one of the first things you actually hear as Atlas is, "Would you kindly grab that shortwave radio?" And then you hear Atlas talking about his wife and son that are stuck in the submarine, Patrick and Moira. Later in the game, when you're in Fort Frolic, you can actually see that he took that from a play. So you can just start piecing things together as you go. It took me a couple of playthroughs when I was younger to finally start grasping the concept, but that initial reveal was like mind-blowing to me when I was younger. And now that I'm older and I can go through it, even though I know it happens, you should have seen it coming, if that makes any sense.
But that's like with so many of these great stories. That's the thing, is that, but you shouldn't, because it's set up so you don't. I mean, of course you should. You know what I mean? But it's like, but you shouldn't. I love that. I should have seen it coming, but of course I couldn't, because I was just so focused on what they went. It's the magic trick thing.
Yeah.
Focus on this hand because the other hand's doing something else, and we're leaving breadcrumbs. But yeah. And then, but it's to give you that feeling of like, oh, that's so cool, which And it is. I mean, it's a great story as well. The other thing is, I think that I really appreciated about it. I remember being asked for the DSL on the third game. They did have us come in, and I believe several different actors, but it was each of us at the end of a recording session. They sort of said to me, "We're doing this sort of little like 2-3 minute interview with each of the voiceover artists." I don't know if they ever used it for anything, but they did sort of little interviews with us, and they said they were going to do it with everybody, so I assume they did. But they did it with me, and I distinctly remember they asked, "Oh, okay," and they sort of asked me what I thought of the game, and because it was off the cuff and I didn't really have time to think about it, and it was really interesting that what I heard come out of my own mouth was that I found sort of that Bioshock at least struck me, having never fully played it. Like I've seen loads of clips and I watched tons of bits and all the rest of it, and I've watched other people play sections of it, but I've never played through the whole way myself. I just can't listen to myself for that long. I'll never listen to this or watch this video. But it's one of those things where I just, what came out of my mouth was, it felt Shakespearean in the end to me, and by that I mean sort of the scale of it. You know, if you go see like a Shakespeare play, you know, you can have something like Henry V. You know, he's giving this speech, and what the import of the speech is that if we don't all fight well tomorrow, every single one of us dies. That's big stakes. That's like big consequences to what's going to happen. It's in modern plays and things, you don't tend to have stakes that big, you know, where you know everybody dies if I don't convince these guys to come with me against the odds, etc. And so Shakespeare was into these big themes and putting battles on stage and everything for, you know, Elizabethan times. You know, incredibly ambitious and huge scale, and the language had to match it, and it did. I mean, Shakespeare's a genius. I adore it. And it's one of those things where, but I did feel that the scale of these characters were sort of the life, that kind of Shakespearean scale, these sort of like Falstaff, Richard III type characters who are larger than life. And I felt like the characters in Bioshock sort of had that weight and size to them, which was sort of fantastic. And the world itself had this vastness and everything, but yet, because you can do big, vast worlds, but it seems it's so well thought out. It's so clever, so well written. It is so nuanced. There's so much subtlety and detail. You know, it's just it's the full package. It's the reason why it's a brilliant game.
And the pacing of it was near perfect. Like,
you know, yeah, it's just brilliantly directed. Yeah, sorry, I didn't interrupt. Yeah.
No, you're good. You're good. So obviously you said you haven't played it, but you've seen clips. So obviously the Would You Kindly reveal in both 1 and Burial at Sea episode 2. In your opinion, which one of those was one of your favorites, like personally? Because I feel the Bioshock 1 reveal was more of an emotional wow, I can't speak English. Sorry. An emotional roller coaster where you get the flashbacks of the Would You Kindly when you see it written on the board. Then you go in the next room and then you find out about Andrew Ryan and your connection with them. And then all of a sudden you're introduced to Frank Fontaine again. So you have that versus the Would You Kindly that Elizabeth has to give your character at the end of Burial at Sea episode 2. In your opinion, which is your favorite first and foremost, and which one do you think had the most impact on players when they were playing from an acting standpoint?
Truthfully, I think my answer to both, I will give a better answer, but my answer to both honestly would be I don't know, because you know there's the first question I would say that you know I assumed the first time, you know, and that's an assumption on my part. I mean, because for me it was one of those things. Like when I didn't find out in the same way as everybody else. I got told that that's what the Would You Kindly bit, because obviously I knew the Fontaine Atlas thing, but the what Would You Kindly meant and everything and all that stuff, the import of that, I got told and was explained to me after the fact. And so I went, oh, that's brilliant, that's really clever. But I didn't have the experience of discovering it in the same way as everyone else. So I knew before I watched the clips You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I also knew the secret that Fontaine and Atlas, sort of, two sides of the same thing, as opposed to two different people. And so, that was also, one of those, spoiler alert, I guess. I'm assuming at this point everyone who's going to watch this knows already. But
Pretty much.
But anyway, you might pop it up on the screen or something before this goes out. But anyway, so I don't know. I would have thought, and it's only my guess, that it would be the shock of it the first time around would have been the thing that you go, wow, I did not see that coming, because I don't know. I've never heard of anyone go, oh yeah, I knew all along. Like, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that. I don't think I've ever I haven't, done the kind of research I'm sure that other people have done, but I've never heard anyone say that, or I've never read it anywhere where people went, oh, it was so obvious. I don't think anyone saw it coming. I certainly didn't see the would you kindly thing coming. So, I mean, if I didn't even know, I should hope no one else figured I'm plenty smarter than me, but still. As for your second question about how so my favorite, I think, would be, because I experienced them differently, that it's hard to tell, but I would say that my favorite, because of the fact of it for other people, I would be the first one. How other people, and your second half of your question was sort of, what do you think that the fans would think? I would have thought the same thing, that the first one, that where it was the real shock, would have been, because they both, I guess the other thing to say, so to finish that thought, I would have thought that the first one, because of the real shock, kind of like, what? But then knowing that, they still managed to, create a whole new set of different circumstances for the second one, where, it's and stakes and things that made it really special. So I don't know. I would just assume the first one because of the novelty of it, but maybe I'm completely wrong.
I mean, I would definitely say the first one is kind of one that punches you in the gut, and also, blows your mind, because you're experiencing the story, especially like your first playthrough, nothing about the game, you're just going through it, and then to have a bombshell dropped on you like that, I can only imagine like how many people's minds were like, wait, the guy helping us the whole time is the one that's going to try to stab us in the back. And it was incredible. But even with Burial at Sea Episode 2, that's the one that kind of set up Bioshock 1. And I guess kind of continuing the loop, the whole infinite loop of Bioshock. So definitely very well done.
The details there, you start to lose me, because I haven't played Infinite. And it's one of those things where it's just like, I got a little confused myself at times, going, wait, what's happening? But anyway, no, I mean, it's one of those things where, I have watched the sort of, the transorbital scene. I've watched it, just people put up a sort of like on YouTube and stuff. And I've watched it, just sort of, in part because, and not to watch myself, because it's the part I don't like, but it's just brilliantly set up and brilliantly done and all that stuff. And, and so like you watch scenes from this game and it's just sort of, wow. It's just like watching a movie, and the fact that it's a game and you get to be a part of it, it's just so cool.
Yeah, the thing about the lobotomy scene, it like I said before, it's just so wince-inducing, because I can only this was a real procedure. Keep that in mind, and I'm sure you're very well aware of that. But for the younger generation out there, this was a very, very real experiment. Even though they considered it a surgery, but having the little taps on the like sickle, or not the sickle, I don't even know what it's called.
The needle.
Yeah, it's like the little and just you hear it. Name. Yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely not in tune with medical supplies and stuff like that, but just hearing the little taps of the hammer and seeing the screen shift, it's gross. But
brilliant, fantastic.
So obviously you said that a while ago you had, social media like Facebook, stuff like that. People would kindly reach out to you and ask if you could recite some lines and stuff like that. Do you often find yourself still reciting lines even after all of these years, just if like something pops into your head, or is this something that you just know exists and kind of just let it like live,
Because I have been asked to record things like "Would you kindly, have a fabulous birthday," or whatever for people. from time to time. That obviously is going to stick. It's one of those things where it does pop in my head from time to time. The only other one that really sticks, I mean, there's plenty of lines I remember and everything. I remember really clearly. I distinctly remember recording talking about Moira and Patrick. I do remember being in the booth, probably without my shirt on, recording those lines distinctly. And I remember, because I probably had to do it more than once. I had to do all of it more than once because I was never very good. But it's one of those things where having him go, I want a little more of this, a little more. So there's more lines that stick with you. I remember go back a while back. I was looking through old email, and there was some sides that were in there, and they've probably been revised since anyway. But these were from 15 years ago, and there were some sides, and I remember looking at some of the lines going, I don't remember recording any of those lines. And then you get to a section and go, oh yeah, I remember this whole bit. Because often it was one line out of context. There was no other dialogue. They were never recorded as conversations where I could see what the person said to me in advance and then what my response was. It was very much Ken going, okay, so here you're upset, this guy's annoying you, this is what you want to say. Here you're trying to woo this person into thinking this, etc. And then so go for it. I think you need to stress that a bit more. Okay, cool. So it was very mechanical in a sense. And so it was one of those things where I didn't have a lot of context. So I didn't know, like I would get 8 pages of just blocks of text. And I didn't know if they were all in the same 20 minutes of playing or if that was spread out over a day of playing. I had no clue. So it was also therefore, unlike doing a play or something where you actually learn your lines first of all as well. And then you go in and you recite them week after week after week, and then you finish. Stuff like that some of it does stick with you. But I will say the one thing that has oddly stuck with me, which is very weird, is there was one day I was reading a comment on YouTube, and someone was trying to write the word splicers in Atlas's accent. So they spelled it SPLOI, splicers or whatever. And I only now think of that word with an O in it. I only think of it as splicers as opposed to splicers, which is a very weird thing for me. But I think of it as splicers. So and so that often will pop into my head. I'll sort of mutter it as I'm buttering toast or something. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what it is, but but I see it in my mind as SPLOI, which it never was in the script. It was just some guy commented or some woman commented on YouTube, and it stuck.
I mean, hey, there's nothing wrong with that, especially if it takes you back to those memories and where you can like relive the stories, relive the experience, and stuff like that as well. That's
absolutely
pretty cool.
Yeah. No, it's one of those things that makes me laugh. Well, it's splicers because it's just how they heard it, the way I said it, kind of thing. It just made me laugh, But anyway, yeah. But no, the Would You Kindly, and there's a few other bits and pieces, that stick out in my mind from the character and what I also used to do, one of the things that would stick out, and I don't have it anymore, but for a long time stuck out, I would, I'd take a break or something. I'd go outside and, get a glass of water or, go use the restroom during recording. And I would go back in. And while I was walking back in, like, okay, we're going to pick up with Atlas rather than you've just done some Fontaine or whatever. I had a sentence for each character that contained most of the substitutions that I would have to do or things I needed to remember to do when I did that voice. So, if I was going to, for Fontaine, it was like, oh, I need to remember to slow down. So I had this word in the sentence. So I had a sentence that would get me back in. And for years, I remembered those 2 sentences long after any of the dialogue. So because that would be, I would sort of repeat it in my mind. Or if we're in the booth and I'm like, okay, I'm losing it. Because there's days when you're tired and you get near the end of the day, you've been doing it, and then you're sort of starting to go away because you're just getting tired. And I had my fallback sentence to get back into, okay, because I'm slipping, that kind of thing. So I had that in my mind that I had as a good way of getting me back into it. When I'm doing plays and I'm doing, if I'm doing a French character or a German character or something, or Scottish or something, I have a sentence in my head that contains most of the things that, that plugs me right back in, that I will say in my mind right before I step out from the wings, or in rehearsal right before I, open my mouth. Because, to get you back to the place that's how I need to sound.
I mean, it's always nice to have that kind of mental preparation to be able to like ground yourself, get back in your character, and continue forward. So, I mean, well done.
No, well, I mean, it's just, desperate means desperate. It's a lifeline. It's one of those, you got to create these things for yourself to desperate times calls for desperate measures. If you're you find you're struggling, you need to find ways to help yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's all fun. I would love to do it again, though. I have to admit, I really, really enjoy it. It's great fun. If anyone's out there and get a chance, go for it. Give it a go. Create a demo tape for yourself and send it to voiceover agents. Nowadays, it's really easy. They have websites and they have guidelines on how to submit to them, and you come up with your voiceover demo tape. And there's plenty of examples of those out there on the internet too. You can listen to on YouTube, and just go for it, because you don't have to be a member of any union. You don't have to have got any education. If you're good at it, you're good at it. And so it's one of those things where you don't have to have gone to grad school. So go for it.
Now, this is,
easy,
I was going to say, it's completely okay. Just basically, if you have a dream of being a voice actor or voice actress, go for it.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, especially the other thing is that it doesn't cost a huge amount of money. I mean, I think most people nowadays have a computer, but a really good microphone like your setup there, you don't need one of those to start, to go to auditions or to audition for stuff. If they're going to have you record a full character or something from home, you might need something better, but you can get a decent microphone for audition level, for like $100, which is not a huge amount of money compared to what you could spend on going to school for 3 years.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, obviously it's not nothing, but it's one of those things where it is a more affordable foot in the door. Then if you start to work, you may have to suddenly, especially with COVID, like I all the stuff I've recorded has been in studios, but nowadays with COVID and everything, a lot more people like yourself have their own rig at home and everything, where they have all their stuff, and so it can get expensive. But starting out as just getting your foot in the door, it is at least possible.
And then luck. Got to remember luck.
Oh, I mean, that's all of life. There's nothing in life that, if anyone tells you that and privilege and all the rest of it. I mean, it's one of those things where, I got lucky and was enormously privileged to be chosen to go and get a 3 years master's in acting for free and get paid doing it. That's just astonishing to me, and I'm an immigrant. And so it's one of those things where you go, that's sort of astonishing that I had that good fortune, but that also is got to do with privilege and all the rest of it. And it's one of those things that they're all intertwined. And no one got anywhere on their own, no matter what they tell you.
Yeah, there's always someone kind of guiding your hand, even if it is just.
And the societal structures we have and all the rest of it. I mean, yeah, it's all there. It's one of those things where. And there are people who should get ahead who don't, because of societal structures and all the rest of it. So we have to be aware of our privilege, and we have to be very grateful for it when it works in our favor, and work to change it when it doesn't work for others.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Now, I have not done this with any other guest, and it's not really a question, but it is at the same time. And if it annoys you, please let me know.
It's a big build-up. I'm actually quite confused.
Okay, so you know how one of the first questions I asked you was about how you slipped in dialects from the Irish to being Fontaine.
Oh, you're not gonna ask me, are you?
I was gonna ask if you still got it.
Oh, I doubt it. Oh my goodness. I didn't even. I probably should have. Didn't even cross my mind that you would ask that. I can mess around, and it might be a bit messy in trying. I mean, I will give it a try. I guess I wish I had something to read, because it's easier rather than trying to also come up with some text or something in front of me. So what is this? There's a magazine in front of me, so I'm just going to take a random piece of text out of a magazine. And I don't have my glasses. I do have my glasses. I've gone blind since. So, okay. I have a program from, this is somebody's bio, or an article about somebody about a violinist from a program from the Oregon Symphony, which is randomly sitting on my table. So yeah, not exactly Bioshock material. But so I guess I can give it a whirl as Atlas, and I'll give it a whirl as Fontaine, which might be. It's been no one ever asked me to record Fontaine, so it's been literally probably 6 or 7 years since I've even uttered a sentence doing the Fontaine, and any major amount of it, 15 years. So it probably going to be really bad. And then you want me to flick from one to the other? Bugger.
I was going to say, if it makes you uncomfortable, it's completely okay. You don't have to.
It made me dreadful. So just, I just want you to be aware, and you can just edit this whole section.
Oh, it's not going to be dreadful. Come on. Be more better on yourself. Don't be down on yourself.
As she reflects on her life in music, Erin credits her parents for much of her success. When I was about 10, Mom would wake me and my siblings at 5 a.m. and have us practice each instrument for an hour before school. I don't know if that sounded like Atlas did it.
I would definitely say yes.
Okay.
It's
been a while.
Yeah, definitely.
I have to
yeah.
him and then come back and do it. Moira, I don't know. Yeah, would you kindly kill those goddamn splicers? I suppose that's sort of how he sounds. Would you kindly kill those goddamn splicers?
And he always sounds splendid when he's asking you questions like that. Yeah.
Oh, I remember that. Splicers. So, yeah. So I guess I do that. And then, Fontaine. The only 3 words that pop in my mind for Fontaine are "there ain't nothing." There ain't nothing. Something like that, isn't it? So that sounds sort of... as she reflect, that's the sound that pops in, and that was what Jordan wasn't thrilled with on number 2, because it keeps popping in. Maybe I'm just getting old. Oh God, I'm gonna try that again. As she reflects on a musical, no, that sounds a bit weird. On a life in music, Erin credits her parent. No, that's not right. That's not. It's there, sort of, but it's not right. I haven't done it in so long.
It's okay. I don't want to make you have an existential crisis.
I'm
so sorry. I am so sorry.
Absolutely.
I shouldn't have asked.
It's in there somewhere. So if I was going to talk about splicers and I was going to talk about there ain't nothing you can't say to me, I don't know, something like that. There you go. That was the transition between the two a little bit.
Well,
that's about all.
I do appreciate that. Thank
everybody,
you.
They go, we can't even do it anymore. So yeah, there you go.
Keep in mind, everybody, it has been quite a long time. We're going on a 15-year anniversary, and we're almost at a 10-year anniversary.
If I had even thought, I'm a little embarrassed because it's things. If I'd thought about it, I would have listened to them last night and been ready. Never even crossed my mind. But anyway, I guess I should have done better. That's bad though.
No, I mean, I think it's not going to really matter.
Did it sound at all like Fontaine?
You could hear it, like you said. It's there. You might just have to listen to it, like you said a couple of times.
I guess I'm being too critical of myself. Maybe I'll get one more go. So there's an ad for a Land Rover on the back of this. So, nimble and efficient, the Range Rover Evoque is built for Northwest sensibilities. That even sound remote?
Then again, too, like you said, to your credit, you might have the voice, and then all of a sudden the audio engineers might do a little tidbit here and there.
That's a no. It didn't sound like it. All right, fair enough.
No. Hey, I'm not saying it's a no.
I'm teasing.
You made me feel like an ass. I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
Yeah, and that was a question that just randomly popped into my head. Like I said, this is, for me, been a year and a half in the making of trying to find contact information and stuff like that. And luckily, I do have someone who follows me, and he reaches out to a lot of the voice actors as well. And he gave me that email that I contacted you on. He was like, hey, why don't you just try this one? I tried it. Unfortunately, I didn't get a response. And I was like, okay, I'll wing it, see what happens. Worst thing that can happen, it's a no. And here we are.
Yeah, no, that's an email address that I check about once every 6 months. So I checked it one day for some other reason, and just went, oh, what's this? And then sort of, sent it, and then I sent you a response going, if you're still interested. But yeah, so but yeah, I just it's and then yes, it's taken us a while to get this to this point, scheduling wise. But anyway, yeah, madness. But anyway, I'm disappointed now. I couldn't do that better. Oh,
Maybe
never thought of it.
maybe we can do a
Foolish
part
man.
two
Never
sometimes.
thought.
Maybe we can do a part two sometime. Who knows? Who knows?
Maybe, absolutely. Although I think I'm completely out of stories at this point. I don't think I have anything else. But yeah, but I wish I'd done that better. I wish I'd prepared a bit better.
And we can pop you in
Bad
on a
actor.
video or a live stream or something, and there we go.
Yeah, you could just take bits from the game and dub it in. That's what you can do. Just my lips don't have to match. Just have the voice going. It'll be great. It'll be perfect. Everyone will go, that's just like I remember.
I'll try my best, even though if it's on the shortwave radio. And don't mind the scratch. He just had an itchy throat.
Yeah. No, he's got a cold. He's walked for half a mile in the rain. Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the, I guess, final questions that I can think of right off the top of my head, there was a new Bioshock that was announced in 2019. More specifically, I believe December of 2019. A lot of information hasn't come out, but there are a lot of rumors and stuff like that, obviously, and leaks. If they actually contact you again, that being 2K, and now they're called Cloud Chamber Studios, it's a completely different studio that's going to actually make the game. It's not Irrational anymore. Would you actually go back and try to run the Atlas and Fontaine character if they needed you in the game?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's been great fun, and why wouldn't I? Absolutely, yeah. And if any of them are watching, I'd practice first before coming back. But yeah, no, it's one of those things where I'd love it, but it's one of those things where because it's been. I mean, I hope it's come across. I had a blast doing it. If nothing else, I had a few good laughs and a few good stories out of it. But yeah, no, it's been really fun, and I've really appreciated all the people out there who have loved the game. I mean, to do something where people love it, that's just a massive bonus. I had so much fun doing it that if no one ever heard of it again after that, so be it. I had great fun. But yeah, if for people to come back and go, this was huge, I loved it, it was great, your character had a huge effect, etc. That's just incredibly rewarding.
And like we were mentioning, I think before we started recording too, you don't really realize how big of an impact one small thing can have on so many people out there, whether it's your characters and actually being in that world of the game, or in my instance, like putting out a video talking about some of the stuff that I've gone through to show people that they're not alone. It's just, it brings you genuine joy. So I would say for every Bioshock fan, thank you for what you've done for us. It means a lot.
Oh, yeah, there's I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't for the people out there who love it. So it's one of those things. It's symbiotic. It's mutual. It's not one way.
And I can still definitely tell that you really enjoyed your time there, because otherwise you wouldn't have taken the interview.
Oh, absolutely. It was fantastic. Yeah, no, it's one of those things. And like, I just like, I'm tickled pink. Is that the phrase I want? I'm chuffed to have been a part of it. And I'm flattered you even wanted to talk to me. I think I said to you when we talked on the phone about doing this that, I don't know that much about games. This might be the worst interview you've ever done. So, that only time will tell.
Yeah, you're just being too hard on yourself. I think you're being too hard on yourself.
Anyway.
Gotta lift up the spirits a little bit. So after Burial at Sea episode 2 came out, which was, I believe, either in the middle or towards the end of 2014. After that, there is nothing on the IMDb page. Like you said, you kind of fell out of it.
Yeah, no, I've been doing theater, and it's one of those things where I also am in Portland, where there's there is some voice work, but not really in video games and things. And it's one of those things where I'm a dad, and so it's you've got other things in life too that are going on. So I also work, my day job, quote unquote, is I work for a theater in town. And so it's one of those things where I'm still involved in theater and plays and acting and all the rest of it all the time. But I was on stage here just before Christmas in a theater called Portland Center Stage, doing a thing called The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. I did that, and it had been a while because of COVID that originally started 2 years ago, and we got shut down after our first week of performances. Then COVID happened. Then we remounted it just before Christmas. There, they remounted it, and I was in it. So I've done theatre stuff, and I have been doing theatre on and off between day job and being a dad and all the rest of it for the last however long. But no, there's not a huge amount of video games and stuff recorded, and so agents up here don't get a huge amount of at least my understanding is agents up here don't get a huge amount of video game companies contacting them going, we want your voice talent kind of thing. So yeah,
because that was going to kind of tie into what I wanted to ask you. Like, how has life been for you after being these characters and being them for so long, spanning from 2007 all the way to 2014? Like, how's life after all of that so far been for you?
I mean, life is good. I can't complain. If you look at the state of the world at the moment, there's so many things that are terrible that, I look at my life and go, it's fine. Like everyone, nothing's perfect. We all have every single person out there has their own story and stuff that they're dealing with and struggling with and that kind of thing, and it's not always obvious to everyone else, but grand scheme of things, I could be an awful among other things, you could be living in Ukraine right now. I mean, there's a million things I could point to going, my life is better than a lot of people's, and so I can't complain. Life's good and I'm enjoying it. It's one of those things where it goes too fast. I do wish that truthfully that I enjoyed doing Bioshock so much that I wish I'd been able to parlay it into more voiceover work. And I did do when I was in Portland, I did do a whole bunch of auditions for the Game of Thrones games. Because so that up north talking like Jon Snow thing, that kind of that is easy enough for me and comes fairly easily to me. And so I remember doing a whole bunch of auditions for those, and nothing ever came of them. And I think it was because they just weren't being recorded in Portland or anything. So, but yeah, so I mean that's what I'm telling myself. They may just God know he's rubbish. So I guess that's also what probably happened actually. But I tell myself, oh, they weren't recording those in Portland. So, but anyway, yeah. So I would have loved to have done more voiceover work, certainly. It's one of those things where what's the old Groucho Marx thing? I've got a face for radio. It's one of those things where voiceover seems to be my lane, if anything. But I do love getting back up on stage in front of a live audience as well. I love doing plays. So try and do that every now and again.
I was gonna say for the voice work, if you want, I can kind of shoot 2K an email if you're interested. I do have some contacts there.
Wow. Well, it's one of those things you can at least tell them how to get in touch with me. How about that? If they needed to. But anyway, yeah. But no, it's one of those things. Yeah, I've always wished more happened, but I just don't think I'm in the right part of the country. It just seems to me anyway. But anyway, I don't know for sure though.
So other than that, is there anything else that would be on your mind that you would like to talk about, or anything that you want to ask me? Because I feel like I don't know. I'm just sitting here like a little kid, just being all giddy and hearing all of these stories, getting to talk to someone I essentially almost idolized when I was growing up. So
I was actually thinking you're a really good interviewer, actually. That was one thing, truthfully, because one of my frustrations about watching interviews is often I remember, and I'm gonna throw poor Larry King under the bus, but I remember he was interviewing the Dalai Lama, and I was quite interested to hear what the Dalai Lama might have to say. And the Dalai Lama appears, at least to me, to be a very thoughtful person. And so Larry King would ask him a question. What do you think of the situation in China? The Dalai Lama would sit back and hesitate because he was thinking about what his answer would be. And because there was the pause, Larry King would go, well, because, America says this about it. And Dalai Lama would then take in that new information, listen and go, mm-hmm. And he would go to answer, and Larry King would interrupt him again. And all you heard was Larry King the entire time. And it drove me up the wall because it's like, Larry, I don't care what you think about these things. I'm tuning in to listen to the Dalai Lama. So I think, it's one of those things where you do very, very well. I don't feel like there's been any lulls or anything where it's been an awkward silences or anything, but you also have kept it going really well. And, you allow people to talk, and then, you know, you have interesting things to say yourself and everything. Like, I actually really enjoyed this.
I appreciate that. That means the world to me. Like, first setting out into kind of like the interview world. Obviously, I have no prior experience with like press and stuff like that. So to be able to do my first interview with Ken Levine, that was the first one I've ever done, and I have very
Good
bad,
catch.
yeah, very bad social anxiety. So I was freaking out about this thing, and basically we just talked for about 30 minutes before we even recorded. All the nerves got out of the way, and ever since then it just feels natural. And like what you were saying about just certain interviewers in general, whether it's like late night TV or even like YouTube interviewers and stuff like that, sometimes they really like to cut off the interviewee, and I never wanted that. If I'm having somebody on my interview, I want them to actually talk, and I don't want to be like, oh, but hold on, this is about me. Like, no, 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 no. People couldn't give a shit about me right now. They want to listen to you.
Oh, I don't know about that, but anyway.
But
No, but it's all. But you also you very much create a sort of a conversation feel, and rather than an interview feel, and you know, we're just chatting, and so that's really nice. And I think, and because I did watch a couple of your interviews, I watched the one with Ken, and I watched one other one prior to this, just to get a sense of what to expect. And yeah, I got the same feel from that. I think I said it to you on the phone the first time we chatted. It was just that was you said you wanted to get a sense of conversation of it. That's absolutely what comes across.
yeah, and if you look, like I said, at any other interviewers, they're usually like reading off, a script or what like their directors are telling you to do and stuff like that. And this whole YouTube thing, at least on my side, is a one man job. I do everything: the recording, the editing, uploading, obviously. So I don't really have to listen to anybody. I'm my own boss. It's pretty nice.
That is good, and it just shows you that despite the fact that you felt anxious about it, that you did it anyway, and look how good it is. So you know, it's like that's fantastic.
And like I said, I really do appreciate that. That means a lot to me, especially that you say that it's a good interview. So it means the world.
No, it's great, absolutely great.
Other than that, like I said, is there anything on your mind that you'd like to ask? Like how, I don't know, just whatever is floating around.
No, like give me an example because I can't think of anything, and so no, I don't have anything off the top of my head. Do you have anyone else lined up to chat to?
At the moment, I only have, I think, maybe one person because a lot of the people that I would like to interview are extremely hard to get in contact with, and a lot of them are obviously bigger. Have you heard of obviously Troy Baker?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no go there. That one's like I can't even. No, no, no. We're not even going to try that. Courtney Draper, she played Elizabeth. Again, that's a no go there. So really, at the moment, I would probably say no. There might be one lined up, but this was one that I couldn't pass up. Especially once we started emailing back and forth, I was like, this is the one I want right now. So I just
Cool.
wanted to
Well, I'm
go
glad that
for it.
happened. I'm sad that the other two aren't going to happen, but it's one of those things where you know, yeah, keep bugging them.
I mean,
It's the
I
worst.
can, yeah, I've still got emails and stuff like that, so it's completely okay. There's no ill will against anybody like that.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
I
like
know.
that.
It'd
Yeah,
be, it'd be nice.
definitely.
I was thinking eventually you're going to run out though. Then what are you going to do?
Eh, never know. I mean, we do have another game coming out, and there's also going to be a movie, so maybe I can
Yeah, I heard
interview
that.
some of the movie stars or some of the new voice actors for the new game and hear about their experiences. So
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Oh yeah, no, you'll have plenty ahead of you. Absolutely.
I definitely hope so. I hope you're right. Um, Other than that, if you have anything going on, like whether it's a website, social media, plays, or any sort of theater that you have, if you want to share that with everybody, you're more than welcome to, and I'll make sure I link everything properly, whether it's like IMDb page or anything that you have going on. So it's all you right now.
Yeah, no, you know, it's one of those things where as I've got older, it's one of those things where I'm less in. I probably should be, but I'm less involved in all of these things. I think COVID. It was interesting. I found myself during COVID, I was on Facebook for a long time. I think I mentioned this at the very start of this. I don't know if you've started recording yet or it'll be part of the interview, but we started when we first got on. I was sort of saying that yeah, I was on Facebook for I was late to Facebook, and then I was on there for about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, and then COVID hit, and I found Facebook slightly depressing, truthfully. And I thought, I let me see, but I also found myself not addicted by any means, but certainly like, you'd sit down on your computer and you just automatically go and check it first thing you kind of thing. And I thought, I'm going to try and give it a break. And the first couple of days, and you'd go and check it on your phone or whatever. But after a while, I suddenly realized one day, God, I haven't checked it in a month or 2 months or 4 months or whatever. And months and months would go by. And then you go, oh, right, I should. And every now and again, I do check it, every, month or two, I'll go in and see if there's anything in there or whatever. But, someone's posted something or whatever. But yeah, for the most part, I don't. It was weird. I found it slightly depressing, and I don't quite know why. I couldn't put my finger on it. But I found myself, I guess I'd scroll down and I'd find myself either jealous of other people or annoyed by other people, and I'm going, I'm not scrolling through this going, I'm feeling happy now, which is like, why am I doing this? Why am I on this? And so I thought I'd try and give myself a bit of a break. And even though I haven't been a huge acolyte of Facebook, it was one of those things where I found myself still difficult to get sort of unhook myself a bit from it, but then did, and I now can take it or leave it. And so for the most part, especially when sad things are happening in the world, as they seem to always be, people either just make me angry or jealous, or I'm like, these aren't good ways to go through life. So, try and get a little distance.
Other than that, is there anything else you would
like? That was a very
mention?
somber note, but no, I think it's one of those things. I don't have anything else, but the world is the world is tough and life is hard for everyone, and so it's one of those things, no matter what, and no matter what it may appear from the outside. So it's one of those things where, I agree with you. It'd be nice if we were all a little bit easier, and a bit more tolerant of whatever gets another person through the day.
Exactly. So that's all of the questions that I can think of at the moment.
There you go. Well, on that positive note.
There we go. And
there we go. We wound it up.
I thank you for the wonderful interview. And again, thank you for taking the time out of your day and out of your family time to sit down and have a nice little chat about Bioshock and go down memory lane.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been I genuinely enjoyed this, and it's one of those things where I'll be mad at myself for probably a week about not being able to nail Fontaine for you. But it's one of those things. Other than that, I'll go off and practice. But it's one of those things where, I really appreciate it, and thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Like I said, don't be too hard on yourself. That's not good. That's not good. Welcome
to my world.
Just promise me one thing: if you do practice, I don't want to get a call that's saying, "Yeah, would you?"
Listen. Oh crap! I'll call you back. Yeah.
I wouldn't mind the call. It's just like randomly, like 3 a.m. It's like, would you kindly? It's like, no, stop! I'm trying to sleep. But anyways,
that is how it's going to go. There's going to be these phone messages just every night of me, getting progressively more frustrated.
I'm okay with that. Like I said, I'll consider us friends now as well. So
absolutely,
definitely have chats back and forth here. But anyways, thank you all so very much for watching this interview. We hope you enjoyed. And for myself and Mr. Karl Hanover, we will be signing out. Take care, stay safe, and I will talk to you all very, very soon.